The entire room went silent. Forks clinked against plates. Glasses froze halfway to lips. And there I was, standing in the middle of Stephen's brand new living room, staring right at him while the projector screen on his wall flickered to life. At first, the guests thought it was some kind of surprise slideshow. Maybe pictures of his new house in Austin, Texas. But it wasn't. The voice that crackled from the speakers made my blood run cold, though I had been preparing for this moment for weeks. It was his voice. Stephen's voice. My son. Yeah, I already forged it. She doesn't even know. The beach house is mine now. All I had to do was sign her name. Easy. Gasps filled the room. Abigail, his wife, dropped her wine glass, red liquid spilling across the cream-colored carpet. His friends glanced at one another, whispering nervously. My hand shook as I clutched my cane, but I stood firm. Because I wasn't alone. Standing beside me, calm as ever, was a man in a gray suit, the real estate lawyer who had been secretly recording Stephen's calls for weeks. Everyone's eyes darted from the screen to Stephen. His face turned pale, then red, then pale again. He opened his mouth, stammering, That's not me. But the recording rolled on. His voice was clear, sharp, undeniable. I felt the weight of every betrayal. The very boy I had raised with kindness, the one I had worked 2 jobs for, the one I had sacrificed everything to help through college, had stolen from me. Forged my signature. Betrayed his own mother. And now the whole world was watching. But what happened next shocked everyone even more. Hello everyone. Welcome to today's video. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. You never know. You might just get a shout out in our next upload. And don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel if you love stories like this. The story didn't begin here. No, this was just where it exploded. To understand how we reached this moment, me, Vivian, a 72-year-old grandmother, standing in front of my own son and exposing his betrayal, we need to go back a few months. Life in Austin had always been quiet for me. I had a small circle of friends, weekly visits to church, and my pride and joy. My late husband's beach house in Galveston. It wasn't just a property. It was where we raised our children every summer, where Stephen and Joshua learned to swim, where Angela fell asleep to the sound of the waves. It held memories, love, and the spirit of my husband. I had promised myself it would stay in the family. But promises, I would soon learn, mean nothing to those blinded by greed. It started with Stephen dropping by more often than usual. At first, I was happy. Any mother would be. He'd bring Abigail, his ever-smiling wife, and they'd sit in my kitchen, asking me about my health, about the beach house, about whether I had considered selling. It must be too much for you to manage now, Mom, Stephen would say, buttering his toast as though he wasn't dissecting my life piece by piece. I laughed it off the first few times, but then Abigail began pressing harder. Vivian, you could sell it and live comfortably. You wouldn't have to worry about repairs, taxes, or upkeep. Her words stung, because it wasn't about the money for me. It was about love, history, and family. One evening, my granddaughter Angela came over. She's only 23, but wise beyond her years. She noticed the way I sighed when Stephen's name came up. She held my hand and said, Grandma, don't let them pressure you. That house is yours. If you don't want to sell it, don't. Her words gave me strength. But soon, strange things began happening. Letters from the bank that I never signed. Calls from real estate agents congratulating me on starting the selling process. And then the shocker. I received an official document in the mail. A deed transfer. With my signature. But it wasn't my signature. It was forged. Perfectly. Terrifyingly. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my chair, staring at the papers, my hands trembling. Betrayal is a sharp knife, but when it comes from your own child, it cuts the deepest. I didn't know what to do. I thought about confronting Stephen, but my heart told me it would only make him hide things better. I needed proof. That's when fate stepped in. At the bank, where I went to raise my concern, I was introduced to a lawyer named Igor. He was calm, sharp-eyed, and had seen cases like this before. Vivian, he said gently, if what you're saying is true, you're dealing with fraud. Family fraud. And if you want justice, we'll need evidence. Strong evidence. I was hesitant. He was asking me to secretly record my own son. It felt wrong. But as Igor leaned forward and said, without proof, he could take everything. Not just the beach house, but your savings too. I knew I had no choice. So we began. Hidden recorders, tapped calls, carefully planned meetings, Abigail unknowingly spilling details over the phone. And Stephen? He was careless, too sure of himself. He bragged, laughed, told friends how easy it was. Every word was caught on tape. Still, the guilt tore at me. Each night, I cried into my pillow. I remembered Stephen as a boy, running barefoot on the beach, calling out, "Mom, watch me." How had that sweet child turned into this greedy man? But life teaches us hard lessons. And sometimes, kindness means protecting yourself, even from your own flesh and blood. The day came when Igor said we had enough evidence. The next step, he told me, is exposure. And so we planned. And so we waited. And so we walked into Stephen's housewarming party, carrying the truth like a storm. And when the first recording played in front of his friends, family, and neighbors, I saw the last flicker of his mask fall away. But before I could even breathe relief, the lights suddenly went out. The lights went out. A gasp spread through the room like wildfire. Guests clutched their glasses tighter, children squealed, and the once bright living room of Stephen's house sank into thick darkness. I froze, my cane pressed into the floor, my heart thudding like a drum inside my chest. For a second, I thought maybe it was just a power outage. Texas summers were known for sudden storms that rattled the lines. But the timing, the timing, was too perfect to be an accident. I heard Stephen's voice, low and sharp in the dark. "Turn that off. Do you hear me? Turn it off now." His words were swallowed by the shuffle of panicked guests and the clinking of glass hitting the ground. Then, a beam of light cut through the room. Someone had pulled out a phone flashlight. Another followed, then another, until the room was glowing in a shaky patchwork of light. And in that moment, I saw Stephen. His face was twisted in anger, sweat glistening on his forehead. He was moving toward Igor, his fists clenched. But Igor didn't flinch. He stood tall, his calm expression unchanged. "Stephen," he said in a steady voice, "you can't hide what you've done. The truth is already recorded." The tension was suffocating. I gripped Angela's hand, who had rushed to my side. "Grandma, stay close to me," she whispered, her voice trembling. Then, just as suddenly as the lights had gone out, they flickered back on. The projector screen was still lit. The recording hadn't stopped. Stephen's own voice once again filled the room. "She won't know until it's too late. The papers are signed. By the time she finds out, the house will already be mine." The crowd erupted. Abigail's face went white as snow. Guests began murmuring louder now, some even glaring at Stephen, others quietly gathering their belongings to leave. The party atmosphere had shattered, replaced with judgment, whispers, and disgust. For a brief moment, I felt relief, but it was quickly replaced with dread, because I knew Stephen. He wasn't going to take this humiliation quietly. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the same cup of coffee I'd been stirring for 20 minutes. The spoon clinked against the porcelain, the sound filling the silence of my small home. Angela had stayed the night with me, worried about my safety. "Grandma," she said softly, "you did the right thing. He needed to be exposed." I looked into her kind eyes, so full of youth and hope. "Angela," I whispered, "no mother dreams of exposing her own child in front of strangers. I just wanted him to stop." Tears slipped down my cheeks. Angela leaned forward and wrapped her arms around me. Her embrace was warm, strong, reminding me that kindness still lived in this world. But my peace didn't last. By noon, there was a knock at the door. It wasn't a polite knock. It was hard, angry, and relentless. My heart raced. Angela rose quickly. "Don't open it, Grandma. Please." But I knew who it was. I stood, my cane steadying me, and shuffled to the door. My hands trembled as I turned the knob. And there he was, Stephen. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw tight, his chest heaving. "You ruined me," he spat. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I swallowed hard. "No, Stephen, I said softly but firmly. You ruined yourself. He stepped closer, so close I could feel his breath. This isn't over. You hear me? You're going to regret this. Angela darted between us, her hands out. Dad, stop. You're scaring her. But Stephen didn't back away. He just glared at me, his face twisted with something I no longer recognized. My son wasn't in those eyes anymore. All I saw was greed. And then, without another word, he stormed off. The sound of his car engine roaring down the street left a hollow ache in my chest. Angela closed the door quickly, locking it. She turned to me, her face pale. Grandma, he's not going to stop. I knew she was right. That night, I sat in my chair by the window, watching the street outside. The Texas sky was clear, the stars twinkling like tiny promises that tomorrow might be better. But I couldn't shake the feeling that danger was closing in. I thought about kindness, about how I had raised Stephen and Joshua to always share, always tell the truth, always respect others. I thought about the time Stephen had cried into my arms after losing a soccer game, or when he stayed up late studying for exams while I worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. Where had I gone wrong? My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of Angela's soft footsteps. She carried a blanket and draped it over me. Try to rest, Grandma, she whispered. We'll get through this. I smiled faintly. You're my light, Angela. And I meant it. Because in a world full of betrayal, her kindness was the one thing keeping me from breaking. But just when I thought the night would pass quietly, a brick came crashing through my living room window. Glass shattered across the floor. Angela screamed, ducking behind the couch. My heart pounded as I gripped my cane tighter, staring at the jagged hole where the window had been. The brick landed on the rug with a heavy thud. Attached to it was a note, and in big, bold letters it read, "Stop or else." The brick lay in the middle of my living room, glass glittering like broken stars all around it. The note, bold and ugly, stared back at me. Stop or else. Angela's hands were over her mouth, her wide eyes reflecting the chaos. My own knees trembled so hard I nearly collapsed. I gripped the edge of the couch for balance, my cane clattering onto the floor beside me. For a long moment, we just stood there, frozen. The house was so quiet you could hear the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. Then Angela whispered, her voice trembling, "Grandma, he did this, didn't he?" I swallowed hard. My throat was dry as sand. "Yes," I whispered. "It was Stephen." Angela crouched down, picked up the brick carefully, and peeled the note away. Her hand shook, but her eyes hardened. "This isn't just about the beach house anymore," she said. "He's threatening us." I wanted to argue. I wanted to believe that maybe it was a prank, maybe some stranger had chosen the wrong house. But deep inside, I knew the truth. My son had crossed a line. We spent the next hour cleaning the glass, Angela insisting I sit while she swept up the shards. "Don't hurt yourself, Grandma." "I'll handle it," she kept saying, her voice firm but gentle. As I watched her, my heart ached. She shouldn't have to deal with this. She was only 23. She should have been enjoying life, chasing her dreams, not protecting her old grandmother from threats. But in that moment, I realized something important. Kindness doesn't come from comfort. It comes from sacrifice. Angela was proving that right before my eyes. When the glass was cleared, she turned to me. "We need to call Igor. Right now." I nodded. My hands trembled as I dialed his number, the phone feeling heavy in my grip. Igor picked up on the first ring. His deep voice was calm as always. "Vivian, what happened?" I told him everything. The brick, the note, the threat. He was silent for a moment, then said firmly, "Do not stay there tonight. Pack a bag. Come to my office. I'll arrange somewhere safe for you." Angela squeezed my shoulder. "You hear that, Grandma? We're leaving. Tonight." By midnight, we were sitting in Igor's office downtown. The city outside was alive with neon lights, but inside his office, it felt like a safe haven. He offered us tea, his eyes kind but serious. "This isn't just fraud anymore," he said. "This is intimidation. He's trying to scare you into silence. That brick is proof." Angela leaned forward. "What do we do?" Igor sighed, tapping his fingers on the desk. "We stay ahead. I'll file a police report about the threat. We'll use it as evidence." But Vivian, he looked at me, his eyes softening. This is going to get harder before it gets easier. Are you ready for that? I stared at the cup of tea in my hands, steam rising in soft curls. Was I ready? My son had turned against me. My own flesh and blood wanted to destroy me. Every part of me screamed to hide, to give up, to just hand over the house so the nightmare would stop. But then I thought about Angela, about the way she had shielded me, about the way she refused to let fear win. I thought about the lessons I had tried to teach my children, lessons about honesty, about courage, about standing up for what's right. And I realized I couldn't back down. I lifted my chin and said, yes, I'm ready. Angela smiled, her eyes shining with pride. The next morning, Igor arranged for us to stay at a small guest house owned by one of his friends. It was quiet, tucked away from the busy streets, with a garden full of roses that smelled sweet even in the Texas heat. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. Angela and I sat on the porch swing that evening, sipping lemonade. The air was thick with the hum of cicadas, and for a moment, it almost felt normal again. Grandma, she said softly, do you ever wish things could go back to the way they were? Before all this, I looked at her, at the way her hair caught the last light of the setting sun. Every day, I admitted, but wishing doesn't change the truth. What matters is what we do now. She nodded, her hand slipping into mine. Then we'll fight. Together. Her words warmed me like a blanket. Even in the darkest times, kindness had the power to light the way. But peace never lasts long when greed is involved. 2 days later, Igor called us into his office again. His expression was grave, his brow furrowed. He slid a folder across the desk toward me. What's this? I asked, my hands hesitant. Court papers, Igor replied. Stephen has filed a lawsuit against you. He's claiming you're mentally unfit to handle your property or finances. He wants control of everything. Your house, your accounts, your assets. Angela gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. He can't do that. That's insane. But Igor's eyes didn't waver. He can try. And he has. I felt the blood drain from my face. The room tilted. My own son was trying to strip me of not just my house, but my dignity. He wanted to declare me incompetent, to paint me as a fragile old woman who couldn't manage her own life. My chest tightened. Tears burned my eyes. How could he do this to me? I whispered. Angela's hands gripped mine tightly. Because he's scared, Grandma. He knows he's caught. He's trying to destroy you before you can destroy him. Igor leaned forward. Vivian, this changes everything. This isn't just a family betrayal anymore. This is war. I stared at the papers, my vision blurring with tears. War. Against my own child. And in that moment, I realized the fight had only just begun. The papers sat heavy in my lap, like stones pressing down on my chest. Words blurred together. Mentally unfit, incompetent, transfer of assets. Each line cut me deeper than the last. Angela's voice broke the silence. Grandma, don't read anymore. It's poison. She tried to take the folder from me, but I held on tight. No, I whispered, my throat raw. I need to see what he's accusing me of. I forced my eyes to focus. Paragraph after paragraph, Stephen painted me as a helpless old woman who couldn't remember things, who left bills unpaid, who wandered in confusion. Lies. All lies. My hand shook with rage. Angela, I said, my voice quivering, your father wants to erase me. Not just take my house, he wants to erase who I am. Angela's eyes filled with tears. She knelt beside me, gripping my hands. But he won't. You're the strongest woman I know. He can't take that from you. Her words gave me a spark of strength, but inside, a storm raged. Betrayal hurts, but betrayal from your own child? It feels like your heart being crushed in slow motion. The first hearing came sooner than I expected. The courthouse in Austin was tall and cold, its stone walls towering above us like judgment itself. Angela walked on one side of me, Igor on the other, each of them like pillars holding me upright. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with whispers as people filed in. I felt every pair of eyes on me, some curious, some pitying. My cane clicked against the polished floor with every step, a sound that echoed louder in my ears than it should have. Then I saw him. Stephen. He sat across the room, dressed in a sharp suit, his hair slicked back, his expression smug. Abigail sat beside him, her eyes darting nervously around the room, as though she wasn't sure if she should feel proud or ashamed. Our eyes met. For a moment, I searched for my son, the boy I once tucked into bed, the boy who once whispered, "I love you, Mom," after nightmares. But that boy was gone. All I saw was a stranger. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. Proceedings began. Stephen's lawyer, a tall man with a booming voice, wasted no time tearing into me. "Your Honor," he began, "my client is deeply concerned about his mother's well-being. At 72 years old, she is no longer able to make sound financial decisions. We have reason to believe she is being manipulated by outsiders, and as such, we are requesting full guardianship of her assets to ensure her safety." My blood boiled. Manipulated? Outsiders? He was talking about Igor, about Angela, about the very people who had stood by me when Stephen turned his back. Igor stood calmly, his voice steady. "Your Honor, the only manipulation at play here is by Mr. Stephen himself. We have recordings." Stephen's lawyer shot up. "Objection." The judge raised a hand. "We'll get to that. Sit down." And just like that, the back and forth began. Words flew like arrows, accusations clashing in the air. My heart pounded as each lawyer painted me either as a helpless old woman or as a victim of a greedy son. When the judge finally turned to me, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. "Mrs. Vivian," he said, his voice firm but not unkind, "do you believe you are capable of managing your own property and finances?" I gripped my cane tighter. My knees felt weak, but my voice was strong. "Yes, Your Honor. I've managed my household, my bills, and my family for decades. I may be older, but I am not incompetent. What I am is betrayed by my own son." Whispers rippled through the courtroom. I caught the flicker of embarrassment on Abigail's face, but Stephen, he didn't flinch. He just glared at me, his eyes burning with silent fury. When the hearing ended, the judge didn't make a ruling. Instead, he ordered further investigation. That meant weeks, maybe months of battles ahead. Outside the courthouse, reporters had already gathered. Microphones shoved into my face, cameras flashing. "Vivian, how do you feel about your son accusing you of incompetence? Do you think he's after your money?" I didn't answer. Angela shielded me, pushing us through the crowd, while Igor guided us to the car. Once we were inside, safe from the noise, I finally let the tears fall. "I never wanted this," I whispered. "I never wanted to fight my own child in court." Angela wrapped her arms around me. "Grandma, sometimes the people we love most leave us no choice. But you're not alone in this fight." Her words reminded me of something I had almost forgotten. Kindness doesn't always come from where you expect it. Sometimes it skips a generation. The following weeks were a blur of depositions, paperwork, and endless worry. Angela stayed with me every night, refusing to leave me alone. Igor worked tirelessly, gathering evidence, preparing witnesses, building a wall of truth against Stephen's lies. But the nights were the hardest. I would sit awake, staring at old photo albums. Pictures of Stephen as a boy, grinning with missing teeth. Pictures of family vacations at the beach house, him chasing seagulls with Joshua. Pictures of birthdays, graduations, holidays. How could the same boy who once held my hand at the fair now be trying to strip me of everything I owned? The ache in my chest was unbearable, but I kept going. For Angela, for myself, for justice. Then came the day that shattered the fragile balance we had built. Angela and I were returning from the grocery store. The sun was high, the Texas air hot and heavy. As we pulled into the driveway of my little home, Angela suddenly slammed on the brakes. My heart lurched. "What's wrong?" She pointed, her hand trembling. And there, on the front door, spray painted in giant, angry letters, were the words, "Old Witch, give up." Angela gasped, her hands covering her mouth. My own breath caught in my throat. The bright red paint dripped down the door like blood. It wasn't just a threat anymore. It was humiliation. Public, cruel, and meant to break me. Angela turned to me, her eyes fierce. "Grandma, this has gone too far. He won't stop until he destroys you." And for the first time, I felt it, not just fear, but anger. Deep, burning anger. Stephen thought I was weak. He thought age made me powerless. But he was about to learn that a mother's strength doesn't fade. It only grows sharper with betrayal. The red paint dripped slowly down the front door, thick and ugly. It looked like the house itself was bleeding. I stood frozen in the driveway, staring at the words. Old witch, give up. Angela's hand tightened around the steering wheel, her knuckles white. She slammed her palm against the horn, the car blaring loudly into the quiet neighborhood. He's sick, Grandma, she shouted, tears in her voice. Your own son. How could he do this to you? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat felt like it had closed up, my chest heavy. I had raised Stephen under this very roof, fed him in that kitchen, tucked him into bed upstairs. Now he had turned my sanctuary into a battlefield. Angela jumped out of the car and rushed to the door, her fingers grazing the dripping paint. We're calling the police, she said firmly. Right now. I followed her slowly, leaning on my cane. Neighbors peeked out from their windows, whispering, their eyes darting from me to the vandalism. Shame burned my cheeks, not because I had done anything wrong, but because Stephen had dragged our family's name into the mud. Angela called the police, her voice sharp and steady. Within minutes, 2 officers arrived. One of them, Officer Miller, was a kind-faced man who looked about Angela's age. He listened carefully as she explained, nodding as he jotted down notes. Do you have any idea who might have done this, ma'am? He asked me gently. I met his eyes, steady despite the tremor in my voice. Yes, my son. The words tasted bitter. The officers took photos, asked questions, and promised to file a report. But as they left, I caught the pity in their eyes. They didn't believe Stephen would ever be held accountable. And maybe they were right. Angela closed the door softly behind them and turned to me. Grandma, he thinks he can scare you. He thinks he'll break. I looked at her, really looked at her. The fire in her eyes, the determination in her stance. And what do you think? I asked. She smiled faintly. I think he doesn't know who he's dealing with. Her words warmed my heart, but I still felt the sting of betrayal deep inside. I sat on the couch, running my fingers over the grooves in my cane. I gave him everything, Angela, I whispered. I worked my fingers raw so he could have a future. And this is how he repays me. Angela knelt in front of me, taking my hands in hers. Grandma, sometimes kindness doesn't fix people. Sometimes it just shows you who they really are. Her words sank deep, painful but true. The next day, Igor called us to his office again. His desk was stacked with folders, his phone buzzing nonstop. He looked more serious than I had ever seen him. Vivian, he began, I need you to hear this from me before you hear it from anyone else. My stomach twisted. What is it? He slid a document across the desk. I leaned forward, Angela at my side. At the top of the page, bold letters spelled out, Petition for emergency guardianship. Angela gasped. He's trying to take everything faster? Igor nodded grimly. Stephen filed this yesterday. He's claiming you're in immediate danger of mismanaging your assets. If the judge approves, you could lose control of your property within days. The room spun. I clutched my cane tighter, struggling to breathe. But the recordings, the threats, the vandalism, doesn't that prove he's the danger, not me? Igor's eyes softened. It does, but the court hasn't ruled on that yet. Until then, we're in a race. Angela slammed her fist against the desk. We're not going to let him win. Tell us what we need to do. Igor leaned back, folding his hands. We need more than recordings now. We need character witnesses. People who can stand in court and say Vivian is of sound mind. Friends, neighbors, community members. The stronger the testimony, the weaker his case. Angela turned to me, her eyes glowing with determination. We can do this, Grandma. You've spent your whole life helping people. Now it's time to let them help you. Her words struck something inside me. She was right. For years, I had given time, money, kindness. I had baked pies for church fundraisers, driven neighbors to doctor appointments, cared for sick friends. Maybe it was time to lean on the very community I had supported all my life. The next week was a blur of visits. Angela drove me to friends' houses, to church members, even to neighbors I hadn't spoken to in months. Each one listened with shock as I explained Stephen's betrayal. Some cried, some hugged me, but all agreed to stand by me. One woman, Abigail's own aunt named Carol, looked me in the eye and said, "Vivian, you've always been the heart of this neighborhood. Everyone knows that. If Stephen thinks he can paint you as weak, he's about to be proven wrong." Her words gave me courage. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like maybe I wasn't fighting alone. Angela worked tirelessly, organizing the testimonies, keeping track of who would appear in court. At night, we'd sit at the kitchen table, papers spread everywhere, her laptop glowing late into the night. "Grandma," she said one evening, yawning but smiling, "you're not just fighting for the house. You're fighting to show people that kindness doesn't mean weakness." I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "And I couldn't do it without you, Angela." But just when I started to believe we had a fighting chance, disaster struck. 2 nights before the emergency hearing, Angela's phone buzzed with a new email. She frowned as she opened it, then her eyes widened in horror. "Grandma, you need to see this." She turned the screen toward me. My heart nearly stopped. It was a video, grainy but clear enough. It showed me sitting in my kitchen, staring at nothing, mumbling softly to myself. My hands fidgeted, my lips moved without sound. To anyone watching, it looked like I was lost, confused, weak. The caption below the video read, "Proof of Vivian's mental decline." And the sender? Stephen. Angela's voice cracked. "He's been spying on you, Grandma. He's recording you without you knowing." I felt the blood drain from my face. My own son had turned my quietest, loneliest moments into weapons against me. And now the whole court would see them. The video played again on Angela's phone, the glow from the screen casting sharp shadows across her face. My own reflection looked back at me, but not as I knew myself. In the video, I looked small, lost, fragile. I was mumbling softly, words broken, my hands fidgeting. If I had known better, I would have believed the story Stephen wanted to tell. That I was slipping, that age had stolen my mind. Angela's voice broke through my silence. "He filmed you when you were alone. He's twisting the truth, Grandma. You weren't confused, you were praying." And she was right. That was the night after the first court hearing, when fear had weighed heavy on my chest. I had sat at the kitchen table whispering a prayer for strength. And now, that private moment had been turned into a weapon. My stomach churned. "He's willing to tear apart even my prayers," I whispered. "His own mother's prayers." Angela slammed the laptop shut, her hands trembling with fury. "This is sick. He's trying to make you look like you've lost your mind. But he's wrong. We'll prove it." I wanted to believe her, but doubt seeped into my heart like poison. If a stranger saw that video without context, what would they think? Would they believe I was praying, or would they believe Stephen's lies? The next day, Igor studied the video in his office, his brow furrowed, his jaw tight. "He's clever," he muttered. "This could sway the judge if we're not careful." Angela crossed her arms. "So what do we do? How do we fight back?" Igor leaned back in his chair, thinking. "We expose the manipulation. We show the truth. Vivian, we need to remind the court not just of what you are, but of who you are. This video is a slice of a moment. We need to present the whole picture." He tapped the table with his pen, his sharp eyes meeting mine. "We'll need witnesses who've seen your clarity of mind firsthand. Friends who've spoken to you daily. People who can vouch that you're sharp, thoughtful, and capable." Angela's face softened. "That's easy. Grandma helps everyone. Half the neighborhood will testify." I smiled faintly at her faith in me, though a part of me still trembled with doubt. "But Stephen, he's my son. People might believe him simply because of that." Igor's voice was firm. "Then we'll make sure they believe the truth instead." That evening, Angela drove me back to the guest house. The roses in the garden were blooming, their sweet smell wrapping around me like comfort. We sat on the porch, sipping tea, letting the night air cool our nerves. "Grandma," Angela said softly, "I know this is tearing you apart, but you've taught me something I'll never forget. That kindness isn't weakness. It's strength." I looked at her, my heart swelling with pride. "And you've taught me something too, Angela, that even when life breaks your heart, love can put the pieces back together." We sat in silence for a while, watching the fireflies dance in the dark. For a moment, the world felt gentle again. The hearing came 2 days later. The courtroom was tense, filled with whispers. Stephen's lawyer wasted no time presenting the video. It played on a large screen for everyone to see, my image flickering like a ghost. Gasps rippled through the room. A few people shook their heads, pity written all over their faces. Stephen sat tall, smug, his lips curved in a smile that made my stomach turn. "Your Honor," his lawyer declared, "this is clear evidence of Mrs. Vivian's mental decline. She is unable to care for herself or her property." The judge turned to Igor. "Counselor, your response?" Igor rose smoothly, his voice steady. "Your Honor, this video shows nothing more than a private moment taken out of context. What you see is not confusion, it's prayer. And to prove that, we've brought witnesses who know Mrs. Vivian personally, who can attest to her clarity of mind and her daily life." One by one, my friends and neighbors stepped forward. Carol from down the street spoke of our weekly chats, how I remembered details of her grandchildren's birthdays better than she did. Pastor Lewis from church testified about my volunteering, how I organized events and handled finances for fundraisers without a single mistake. Even the young cashier from the grocery store, Emily, told the court how I helped her balance her schedule when she was struggling with college. Each testimony was like a brick in a wall, shielding me from Stephen's lies. By the time Igor finished, the judge looked thoughtful. "We'll take all of this into consideration," he said, "but the court will require further review before a ruling is made." The gavel struck and the hearing ended. As we left the courthouse, reporters swarmed again. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved in my face. One reporter shouted, "Vivian, how do you feel about your own son trying to prove you're unfit?" I paused, my cane steady in my hand, my voice strong despite the tremor in my heart. "I feel betrayed," I said, "but I also feel loved. Because for every son who turns against his mother, there are friends, neighbors, and grandchildren who stand by her. And that love is stronger than any lie." The crowd went silent for a moment, then a few people clapped. Angela beamed at me, pride shining in her eyes. "You were amazing, Grandma." I smiled faintly, though inside, I knew the war wasn't over. That night, Angela and I returned to the guest house. We were both exhausted, our bodies heavy with the weight of the day. I settled into my chair by the window, staring at the stars. Angela curled up on the couch, her phone buzzing with messages of support from friends and family who had heard about the hearing. For the first time in weeks, hope flickered in my heart. But then, just as sleep began to close my eyes, Angela's phone buzzed again. She frowned, picking it up. Her face went pale. "Grandma," she whispered. I sat up quickly. "What is it?" She turned the screen toward me. It was another email, another video. But this one was worse, much worse. It showed me at the pharmacy last month, fumbling with my wallet, dropping my ID on the counter. The caption read, "Vivian cannot even handle basic tasks. Proof she is a danger to herself." Angela's hand shook as she whispered, "Grandma, he's watching you everywhere." My heart stopped cold. Stephen wasn't just attacking me in court. H was stalking me. Angela's phone slipped from her hands and clattered onto the hardwood floor. The video kept looping on the screen. Me at the pharmacy, bending down to pick up my ID, fumbling with the zipper of my wallet. I remembered that day. My arthritis had been especially bad, and the clerk was kind enough to help me scoop up my things. But now that tiny, ordinary moment had been twisted into evidence. I pressed my hand against my chest. My heart was hammering. "He's watching me, Angela. He's following me." Angela's voice shook. "Grandma, this isn't just him digging up old things. This was last month. That means he's still doing it. He's spying on you." A chill crawled down my spine. I had always known my son's greed, but I had never believed it could sink to this. To stalk his own mother, recording every stumble, every slip, waiting for the moment I looked weak. Angela gripped my hand tightly. "We need to tell Igor. Now." At dawn, Igor sat with us in his office. His eyes narrowed as he watched the pharmacy video. Then he turned it off and set Angela's phone down slowly, as though it might explode. "This changes things," he said, his voice low. This isn't just about fraud or intimidation anymore. This is harassment, surveillance, possibly even illegal stalking. Angela leaned forward, fire blazing in her eyes. So we can charge him? We can stop him. Igor rubbed his chin. It depends. We'll need to prove it was him or someone he hired. And that won't be easy. But Vivian, he looked at me with quiet gravity. This isn't just about winning a case anymore. This is about your safety. My hands trembled in my lap. My own son wants to destroy me. What kind of safety is left for me? Igor's gaze softened. The kind you make for yourself. The kind your allies protect. You're not alone, Vivian. And we'll make sure he knows it. The following days were tense. Every time I stepped outside the guest house, I felt eyes on me. Every rustle in the rose bushes. Every car that slowed on the street. Every stranger's glance at the grocery store made my skin crawl. Angela never left my side. She was like my shadow, holding my arm, scanning every corner as if she could spot danger before it reached me. Her protectiveness touched me, but it also broke my heart. A young woman shouldn't have to live like this. Alert, anxious, guarding her grandmother like a soldier in enemy territory. One night, as we washed dishes together in the little kitchen, Angela spoke softly. Grandma, do you ever regret being kind to him? To Stephen? I set down a plate carefully. The question cut deep. I regret that he turned away from kindness. But no, I don't regret showing it. Kindness isn't wasted, even if it falls on hard ground. It's who I am. She wiped her hands, then hugged me tightly. That's why I'll never let him win. Because you deserve better than this. Her words lit a flame in me. I realized then that kindness wasn't just something I gave. It was something I had planted. And in Angela, it had grown strong. But peace, as always, didn't last. 3 nights later, just past midnight, a noise woke me from sleep. At first I thought it was a dream, the sound of gravel crunching outside the guest house. Then came a faint squeak, like a door hinge. My blood ran cold. I reached for my cane and shuffled to Angela's room. She was already awake, pulling on her slippers, her face pale. You heard it too, she whispered. We crept to the window together. The garden was bathed in moonlight, the roses glowing pale silver. And there, near the gate, was a shadow. A man's figure, tall and still, watching the house. Angela gasped softly. Grandma, someone's out there. My cane shook in my hand. I wanted to believe it was a neighbor, a passerby. But deep in my heart, I knew who it was. Stephen, my own son, standing in the dark, watching me like a predator stalking prey. And then, just as quickly as he appeared, he stepped back into the shadows and vanished. Angela clutched my arm. We need to call Igor. Now. I stood frozen, staring at the gate, my chest heavy with dread. My son hadn't just betrayed me in court. He had brought the war to my doorstep. The shadow outside the gate replayed in my mind all night. I didn't sleep. Even when I closed my eyes, I saw him, tall, still watching. My own son, standing in the dark like a thief of peace. Angela dozed in the chair beside me, her phone clutched in her hand, ready to dial Igor or the police if the shadow returned. She looked so young in sleep, her face soft, but the tight grip she kept on that phone revealed the truth. She was as afraid as I was. By sunrise, neither of us had eaten. My stomach was tied in knots, and my hands still trembled. Angela broke the silence first. Grandma, she whispered, if he can just come here like that, where are we safe? I didn't answer, because deep inside, I wasn't sure we were safe anywhere anymore. Igor's office was tense that morning. He listened to our story without interrupting, his face growing darker with every word. When I told him about the figure at the gate, his jaw tightened. That was him, he said flatly. Stephen, he's escalating. Angela's voice was sharp. So what do we do? Wait until he breaks the door down. Until he hurts her. Igor shook his head. No, we take action. Tonight. He leaned forward, his eyes steady on mine. Vivian, I'm putting you under protection. I have contacts in private security. Men I trust. They'll watch the guest house. If Stephen comes back, he won't get within 10 feet of you. Angela exhaled, relief flickering across her face. Finally, but I hesitated. My son, my own blood, being watched, confronted like a criminal? My heart ached at the thought. Igor seemed to read my silence. Vivian, he said softly, kindness is your strength. But sometimes strength means drawing lines. You can forgive your son one day if you choose. But today, you must protect yourself. I nodded slowly. The truth stung, but it was truth nonetheless. That night, the guest house felt different. Two men in plain clothes arrived just after sunset, both calm and polite, assuring us they'd keep watch outside. Angela seemed reassured, but I couldn't shake the heaviness in my chest. I sat on the porch for a while, watching the roses sway in the warm Texas breeze. The security men stood near the gate, shadows among shadows. Angela joined me, carrying 2 mugs of tea. You know, she said softly, you always told me roses bloom best when they're cared for. But they also have thorns. Maybe this is your thorn, Grandma. The hard part that protects the beauty. I smiled faintly at her wisdom. And maybe, I replied, you're my bloom. The reason I don't give up. She squeezed my hand, and for a brief moment, the fear loosened its grip on my chest. But safety proved fragile. Near midnight, a sound shattered the quiet. A car engine, low and rumbling, stopped just beyond the guest house fence. Angela peeked through the blinds, her breath catching. It's him, she whispered. My heart pounded. I could see the headlights through the cracks in the curtains, glowing like angry eyes. The security men moved quickly, one approaching the car, the other signaling with a flashlight. For a long moment, the engine idled. Then, the driver's side door opened. I held my breath. Stephen stepped out. Even from a distance, I recognized the tilt of his head, the way his shoulders squared. He looked older than the last time I had seen him up close. His face harder, his hair thinner, but there was no mistaking him. My son, the man who used to hold my hand as a boy, who used to beg me to read him one more bedtime story. Now standing in the dark, defiance written in every line of his body. One of the guards held up a hand. Sir, you need to leave. Stephen didn't move. His voice carried through the night air, sharp and bitter. She's my mother. I have a right to be here. The second guard stepped forward. Not tonight, you don't. Leave now or the police get called. Stephen's laugh was harsh, ugly. The police? For talking to my own mother? You don't know who you're dealing with. Angela's grip tightened on my arm. Don't go out there, Grandma. Please. But my legs betrayed me. I rose, leaning heavily on my cane, and moved to the doorway. I couldn't stop myself. I needed him to see me. When Stephen's eyes found mine across the yard, his smirk faltered for a fraction of a second. His voice rose, bitter with venom. Mom, you think you can hide from me? You think these people can protect you? You're mine. Everything you own is mine. The guard shifted, ready to intervene, but my heart broke at his words. Not because of the threat, because of the emptiness in his eyes. Stephen, I whispered, though he couldn't hear me. What happened to you? The guards moved closer, blocking his view, and finally, with a curse, he climbed back into his car. The engine roared, and the vehicle disappeared into the night. Angela collapsed into tears beside me, burying her face in her hands. I stroked her hair gently, my own tears silent. But inside me, something shifted. This was no longer just about protecting myself. This was about showing Stephen that greed would not break me. That love, dignity, and truth were stronger than any lie he could spin. The next morning, Igor arrived with news. He had filed an emergency restraining order. From this moment, he said firmly, Stephen cannot come within 500 feet of you. If he does, the police will have grounds to arrest him. Angela sagged with relief, but I knew better. Stephen had crossed every line already. A piece of paper would not stop him. And I was right. Because that afternoon, as Angela scrolled through her phone, her face drained of color. Grandma, look. She handed me the phone. There, on social media, was a post from Stephen himself. A photo of me, taken without my knowledge, sitting on the porch swing in the rose garden. The caption read, If my own mother won't do what's right, maybe the world needs to see how fragile she really is. My blood froze. Stephen wasn't just stalking me anymore. He was broadcasting me. The photo sat on the glowing phone screen like a wound I couldn't stop staring at. There I was, sitting on the porch swing, the roses blooming behind me, my cane leaning against the railing. A peaceful moment, stolen and twisted. And underneath it, the caption, "If my own mother won't do what's right, maybe the world needs to see how fragile she really is." Dozens of comments were already piling in. Some were sympathetic. This poor woman deserves respect. Others, crueler. If she's really this weak, maybe her son's right to step in. Worst of all were the strangers who didn't know me but judged me anyway. Looks like dementia. Sad, but she shouldn't be left alone. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. He's showing the world what he wants them to believe, I whispered. He's painting me as broken. Angela's eyes blazed with fury. Grandma, don't look at the comments. These people don't know you. They don't know how sharp you are, how strong you are. But her words couldn't erase the sting. It wasn't just Stephen who doubted me anymore, it was the world. Igor arrived within the hour, his face grim. He studied the post on Angela's phone, then set it down with deliberate calm. "This," he said, "changes everything." Angela crossed her arms. "You said that last time." "I meant it then and I mean it now," Igor replied, his voice steady. "This is no longer just about you, Vivian. Your reputation is at stake. Once something like this is online, it spreads like wildfire. Judges, lawyers, even potential jurors, people will see it. We have to act fast." I pressed a trembling hand against my chest. "But how? How do you erase something that's already out there?" Igor leaned forward. "You don't erase it. You outshine it. We counter his lies with the truth, and we do it publicly." Angela's eyes lit with determination. "Yes, let's tell your story, Grandma. Let's show people the real you." I hesitated. The thought of putting my private life on display made my stomach twist. But then I thought of Stephen's post, the cruel comments, the strangers who saw me as a frail old woman. If I didn't fight back, that's all they'd ever believe. I lifted my chin. "All right, let's do it." The following days blurred into a storm of preparation. Igor arranged for a local news outlet to cover my story. Angela helped gather friends, neighbors, and church members who were willing to speak on my behalf. Even Emily from the grocery store volunteered. Everywhere I looked, people were stepping forward, not because they had to, but because kindness binds people when cruelty tries to break them. One evening, as Angela helped me rehearse what I might say on camera, I faltered. My throat closed, fear gnawed at me. What if I stumble over my words? What if I look foolish? Angela took my hands, her eyes steady on mine. "Grandma, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be honest. People will feel your heart. That's stronger than anything Stephen can twist." Her faith in me steadied my trembling. The interview happened on a sunny afternoon in Dallas. The reporter, a kind woman named Rachel, sat across from me on the porch swing, the same one Stephen had photographed. Cameras rolled as she asked me about my life, about the house, about the lawsuit. I spoke slowly, carefully, but truthfully. I told her about raising Stephen, about the years of sacrifice, about how I never imagined my own child would turn against me. I spoke about love, about betrayal, and about the importance of dignity in old age. Rachel's eyes softened as she listened. And when the interview aired that night, something remarkable happened. Messages flooded in, emails, letters, even flowers delivered to the guest house. Strangers wrote things like, "You remind me of my grandma and don't let him win. We're rooting for you." For the first time in weeks, hope felt bigger than fear. Angela grinned as she scrolled through supportive comments online. "See, Grandma? The truth shines brighter. People believe you." I smiled, though my heart knew better than to rest easy. Stephen wouldn't back down so easily. And I was right. 2 nights later, the guest house phone rang. Angela answered, expecting Igor. But the moment she pressed the receiver to her ear, her face drained of color. She whispered, "It's him." She put the phone on speaker, her hand shaking. Stephen's voice slithered through the line, low and bitter. "You think you're clever, Mom, playing the victim on TV. But you don't know what I have. You don't know what I can do. That interview won't save you. It'll bury you." Angela's voice rose, furious. "Leave her alone. You're a coward hiding behind lies." Stephen chuckled darkly. "Coward? No, I'm just waiting for the right moment." And when it comes, you'll wish you'd stayed silent. The line went dead. Angela slammed the phone down, her whole body shaking. Grandma, he's not stopping. He's planning something. I sat in stunned silence, my heart pounding. My son's voice echoed in my head, his words a promise of storms yet to come. And deep inside, I knew. The real battle hadn't even begun. The phone call haunted me for days. Stephen's words clung to me like a shadow I couldn't shake. You don't know what I can do. That interview won't save you. It'll bury you. I found myself listening for him everywhere, at the gate, in the rustle of bushes, in the hum of passing cars. Angela stayed closer than ever, but I could see the exhaustion weighing on her too. Fear had a way of stealing even the smallest comforts of life. And then, one morning, the world discovered what Stephen had meant. Angela burst into the kitchen, her phone shaking in her hand. Her face was pale, her voice tight. Grandma, look. She set the phone on the table. My breath caught. On the screen was a website, a smear blog. Right there, plastered in bold letters, was my name. Below it, headline screamed lies. Elderly woman struggling with dementia refuses to let go of property. Neighbors fear for her safety after erratic behavior. Son forced to step in as mother loses grip on reality. Angela scrolled down, fury flashing in her eyes. He made up stories. Look, he even has fake interviews. Anonymous people saying you wandered into traffic, that you forgot where you lived. It's all lies, Grandma. Every bit of it. My chest tightened, my heart sinking. People will believe this, I whispered. Angela slammed the phone down. No, not if we fight harder. But I could see the pain in her eyes. The internet had no mercy. Lies travel faster than truth, and Stephen knew it. Igor's reaction was immediate and fierce. This crosses a legal line, he said, slamming the printouts of the blog onto his desk. Defamation. False reporting. We'll sue him for this. I'll have my team draft papers by tomorrow. Angela leaned forward, her fists clenched. But how do we stop the damage? People are already sharing it. What if the judge sees it? Igor's jaw tightened. Then we give the judge something stronger. We prove your grandmother's strength so clearly, no blog could bury it. He turned to me, his eyes softening. Vivian, I know this is cruel beyond measure, but I need you to hold steady, because this is the storm before the calm. I nodded faintly, though my heart felt heavy. I've survived storms before. I'll survive this too. That night, Angela sat with me on the porch swing, her laptop balanced on her knees. She was working late, combing through every word Stephen had written, collecting screenshots as evidence. The stars twinkled above us, but my eyes stayed fixed on her face. She looked so determined, so fierce, like a warrior in a battle she never asked for. Angela, I said softly, don't let his darkness steal your light. She paused, glancing up. What do you mean? You're young. You should be laughing, dreaming, living your life, not drowning in his poison. Promise me you'll keep your heart soft, no matter how hard this gets. Her eyes glistened. She closed the laptop and leaned against me. I promise, Grandma, but I'll never stop fighting for you either. Her words warmed me. Even in this nightmare, love was a lantern in the dark. But peace shattered again. 3 nights later, the security guards outside the guest house rushed us awake. Their voices were sharp, urgent. Mrs. Vivian. Miss Angela. Stay inside. Angela grabbed my arm, pulling me to the window. Through the glass, I saw flames flickering near the fence line. My stomach dropped. Someone had set fire to the rose bushes. The flames crackled, orange and hungry, devouring the flowers I had tended with such care. Smoke curled into the night sky as the guards doused the blaze with extinguishers. Angela gasped, her hands trembling. Grandma, the roses. Tears burned my eyes as I watched the fire eat away at the garden that had been my sanctuary. My roses. The blooms I had watered every morning, the ones Angela and I had admired at sunset, were now blackened skeletons. When the fire was finally out, one of the guards returned, his face grim. It was deliberate. We found a gasoline can near the fence. My knees buckled. Angela caught me just before I fell. It wasn't just lies anymore. Stephen was trying to burn my life to the ground. The next morning, Igor stood among the charred remains of the roses, his face a mask of fury. "This is arson," he said coldly. "This is criminal. We'll report it immediately." Angela's voice cracked as she pointed to the blackened stems. "He killed them, Igor. He killed her roses." Igor put a steadying hand on my shoulder. "Vivian, I swear to you, he won't get away with this. He's losing control, and that makes him dangerous. But it also makes him sloppy. He's leaving evidence everywhere." I nodded numbly, though inside my heart ached deeper than words could express. Those roses had been more than flowers. They had been symbols of hope, of resilience. Watching them burn felt like watching a part of myself turn to ash. Angela squeezed my hand. "We'll plant new ones, Grandma. Stronger ones. And we'll keep fighting." Her voice was fierce, unshaken. And in her words, I felt a flicker of strength return. That evening, as the sun set over the scorched garden, I sat with Angela on the porch swing. The air still smelled faintly of smoke. "Grandma," she whispered, "do you think he hates you?" I thought about Stephen as a boy, his laugh, his small hand clutching mine, the way he used to run to me when he was afraid of thunderstorms. And then I thought about the man who now set fires in the night. "I think," I said softly, "he hates what he thinks I'm standing in the way of. But hate is just love that's been twisted. Somewhere deep inside, he's still my son. But until he finds his way back, I have to protect myself." Angela rested her head on my shoulder. "Then we'll protect you. Together." The stars came out, faint but steady, reminding me that even in darkness, light remains. But just when I thought things couldn't sink lower, the doorbell rang the next morning. Angela opened it cautiously and froze. On the porch was a box. No name, no return address. Just a plain cardboard box, sealed with tape. Angela's hands shook. "Grandma, should we open it?" Something in my gut twisted. I stepped closer, leaning on my cane. Angela slowly cut through the tape and lifted the flaps. Inside was one of my roses, charred, blackened, wrapped carefully in plastic like a trophy, and tucked beside it, a note. The garden was just the beginning. Angela's scream tore through the house. My cane slipped from my grasp, clattering to the floor. Stephen wasn't just trying to scare me anymore. He was promising war. Angela's scream still echoed in the hallway as I stared at the blackened rose in the box. Its petals, once bright and alive, were shriveled, stiff, and lifeless, a cruel reminder of the garden Stephen had destroyed. But it was the note that froze my blood. The garden was just the beginning. Angela shoved the box shut and pushed it across the porch as if it were poison. Her chest rose and fell in frantic gasps. "Grandma, he's insane. He's actually insane. We need to leave this house tonight. We can't stay here." I reached for her trembling hand. "If we run, Angela, he'll win. That's what he wants, to see us break. We can't give him that." Tears spilled down her cheeks as she looked at me. "But what if he hurts you? What if the next box isn't just a rose?" Her words lodged in my chest like thorns. She was right. Stephen wasn't just playing with threats anymore. He was building towards something worse. That evening, Igor came straight over when we called. He lifted the charred rose carefully, his face grim. "He's escalating. The fire, the lies, now this, it's psychological warfare. But leaving won't stop him. If anything, it'll embolden him." Angela crossed her arms, her voice shaking. "So what do we do? Just wait around until he actually shows up with a can of gasoline?" Igor set the rose back into the box and snapped it shut. "No, we turn his game against him. He wants fear. We'll give him exposure. We'll take this note, this box, this rose, and we'll bring it straight to the authorities. Then we'll make sure everyone sees exactly who he really is." Angela's eyes narrowed. "You mean the news?" Igor nodded. "The press is already sniffing around after his smear blog. Once they see this, they'll know who's really losing his grip." I leaned heavily on my cane, staring at the sealed box. My heart ached at the thought of the world knowing the truth about my son, that he had sent his own mother a burnt flower as a warning. But silence had cost me too much already. "You're right," I whispered. "It's time the world saw who Stephen has become." That night was sleepless. Every creak in the guest house, every rustle outside, made Angela jolt awake. She insisted on moving a chair against the front door, as though wood and metal could keep Stephen's rage from finding us. I lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts spinning. How had we come to this point? Where had the little boy who once pressed daisy chains into my hands gone? But as the hours dragged on, I realized something important. Stephen's cruelty was not proof of my failure as a mother. It was proof of his choices as a man. And if he could choose darkness, I could still choose light. In the silence of the night, I whispered a prayer, not just for my safety, but for his lost soul. The next day, Igor marched us straight into the sheriff's office in Raleigh. He laid the box on the desk of the deputy in charge, his tone sharp. This is evidence of harassment, intimidation, and arson. We want it on record. Now, the deputy raised his eyebrows as he carefully lifted the rose. Good Lord, he picked up the note, his expression hardening. This isn't just harassment. This is a threat. We'll assign patrol cars to pass by your property regularly. But you all need to be on high alert. Angela leaned forward. So you believe us? You'll take this seriously? The deputy nodded. This isn't the kind of thing we ignore. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of relief. The law was finally seeing Stephen for what he was becoming. But as we left the sheriff's office, a chill still followed me. If Stephen had gone this far already, what line wouldn't he cross? 2 days later, Angela insisted on driving me out to the farmer's market in town. You need air, Grandma, she said, squeezing my hand. You need to see something alive again after the roses. Walking among the stalls, breathing in the scent of fresh bread and sun-warmed tomatoes, did bring a sense of peace. Strangers smiled, vendors called out cheerfully, and for a moment I remembered what it felt like to live without fear shadowing every step. One elderly woman at a stall pressed a small bouquet of wildflowers into my hands. No charge, she said kindly. You look like you need these today. Tears pricked my eyes as I thanked her. Her simple kindness reminded me that the world wasn't all cruelty, that even in the middle of darkness, compassion bloomed quietly. Angela saw the flowers and smiled. See, not every rose burns. Her words warmed me more than the sun on my face, but our fragile peace was shattered again that evening. We returned to the guest house just as the sun dipped below the trees. The moment we stepped inside, Angela froze. Grandma, she whispered. My heart thudded as I followed her gaze. There, on the living room table, sat another box. We hadn't left it there. We had locked the door. The windows were shut. The guards outside swore no one had gone in. Angela's hands shook violently as she reached for her phone. Call Igor. Call the sheriff. Call somebody. He's been inside this house. I moved closer, my cane tapping against the floor. With trembling hands, I lifted the lid. Inside wasn't a rose this time. It was a photo. A picture of me, sleeping in my bed. The blood drained from my face. My knees buckled. Stephen hadn't just been near us. He had been watching us, from inside our walls, and he wanted us to know it. Angela's scream cut through the room as I clutched the photograph in my trembling hands. My own face stared back at me, peaceful, unaware, vulnerable. The picture was taken while I slept. Angela grabbed my arm, her voice breaking. Grandma, he was here. He was inside. While you were sleeping, while we were both here, he was in this house. The walls seemed to close in around me. The locks, the guards, the cameras, all of it had meant nothing. Stephen had slipped past it all, left his calling card, and vanished again. The guards rushed in, faces pale when they saw the photo. One stammered, Ma'am, I swear we didn't see anyone. No alarms tripped, no doors opened. Igor arrived minutes later, his face thunderous. He snatched the picture from the table and held it up to the guards. Do you understand what this means? He's inside your perimeter. He's mocking your security. If he can do this, he can do anything. Angela's voice shook with fury. So what do we do, Igor? Sit here and wait until he kills her. Igor's jaw tightened. He turned to me. Vivian, this ends tonight. We're setting a trap. That evening, Igor laid out the plan in grim detail. Stephen thinks he's clever. He thinks he can walk in and out as he pleases. So we're going to let him try. We'll leave this place looking vulnerable, one window unlocked, lights dim, guards further back. But inside, we'll have cameras, microphones, and law enforcement waiting. Angela's eyes widened. You mean you want him to come here? On purpose. Igor nodded. It's the only way to catch him in the act. We can't keep chasing shadows. We need him on record, breaking in, threatening, leaving no doubt who he really is. My stomach turned to ice. The thought of Stephen creeping through my home again made my skin crawl. But Igor was right. The courts could ignore whispers, blogs, even roses, but they couldn't ignore hard proof. I took a shaky breath. If this is what it takes to end it, then let him come. Angela clutched my hand. Grandma, are you sure? I squeezed back. I've lived too long to let fear write the last chapter of my life. Tonight, we take back our peace. The hours crawled by. Angela and I sat together in the darkened living room. The only sound the faint hum of hidden recording devices. The unlocked window stood slightly ajar, bait for the man who had once been my little boy. Every creak of the house made my heart pound. Angela kept her hand clasped in mine, her thumb rubbing circles into my palm. He won't win, Grandma, she whispered. He can't. And then, at 2:17 a.m., we heard it. The faintest shuffle. A shoe brushing against the porch. Angela's grip tightened. I held my breath. The window creaked. Slowly, silently, it slid further open. And there he was, Stephen, his face half hidden beneath a hood, his movements sharp, calculated. He slipped inside like a shadow, unaware that every step was being captured on hidden cameras. My heart twisted at the sight of him. My son, my flesh and blood. But his eyes were cold, scanning the room like a predator. He moved toward the table, pulling something from his pocket. A lighter. Angela gasped softly. Stephen crouched, flicking the flame to life, holding it near the curtains. He meant to burn us alive in our sleep. That was when the sheriff's deputies burst from the hallway. Freeze! Drop it now. The room erupted in chaos, shouts, the clatter of boots, Stephen's roar of rage as the lighter clattered to the floor. Angela screamed, clutching my arm as deputies tackled Stephen, wrestling him to the ground. He thrashed violently, spitting curses. She doesn't deserve it. It's mine. All of it's mine. Igor stepped forward, his voice cold as steel. And now everyone will know. The deputies snapped handcuffs around Stephen's wrists. For the first time, his eyes met mine. And in them, I saw no trace of the boy I had raised, only bitterness, anger, and desperation. As they dragged him away, my knees buckled. Angela caught me, tears streaming down her cheeks. It's over, Grandma, she whispered, her voice shaking. He can't hurt you anymore. The trial was brutal. Stephen's lawyers tried to paint him as a man pushed to desperation, a son forced to act by a delusional mother clinging to property. But the footage told the truth. The world saw him creep through my window. They saw the lighter in his hand. They heard his screams of entitlement as deputies pinned him down. The smear blogs crumbled. The whispers evaporated. And for the first time in months, I could breathe. Angela stood by me every day, her presence a constant reminder that love was stronger than fear. Igor fought like a lion in court, and when the gavel finally fell, Stephen was sentenced, his power stripped away, his threats silenced by the very system he thought he could manipulate. Months later, the roses bloomed again. Angela and I had replanted them together, our hands dirty, our laughter echoing through the garden. One morning, as the sun rose over Raleigh, I walked among the fresh blossoms, leaning on my cane. Their petals glistened with dew, vibrant and alive. Angela joined me, slipping her arm through mine. They're beautiful, Grandma, even more than before. I smiled softly, because they survived the fire, just like us. We stood in silence for a moment, breathing in the scent of renewal. Stephen's choices had nearly destroyed us, but in the end, love, truth, and resilience had triumphed. And as I looked at Angela's bright eyes, full of hope for the future, I knew one thing for certain. No amount of lies, threats, or fire could ever destroy what we had built together. Because in the end, kindness outlives cruelty, and roses always bloom again.